Hi, I'm Sarah Veblen. I'm here today to show you how to cover a shaped shoulder pad. I've already done a video on how to cover this shoulder pad number 405, which is a straight shoulder pad. This edge is straight. And this is one of our most popular sellers. It's number 412, Angel Wing. And even though there's a little curvature here, it's considered straight because this edge is rather straight. Today we're going to be talking about shaped shoulder pads, and by that I mean a shoulder pad that has a lot of curvature in here. This is number 403. It's a really nice small raglan. It provides just a little bit of shaping in here without very much lift. Its cousin is number 404, where this is shaped a little bit more and it's a little bit longer of a pad. And you can see it also just snugs right into your shoulder really nicely with only supplying a small amount of lift, a little bit more than the first one. And today what I'm going to show you how to cover is number 417. And the reason I'm doing it is because it's quite shaped in here. And if you see how I handle this deep shaping, then these smaller amounts of shaping will be really easy. It's the same theory. What I've prepared are two rectangles of China silk. I've been very careful that I have a perfect cross grain and a perfect length of grain. And that's important because I'll be using the bias of the grain of the fabric to help me manipulate around the shoulder pad. So we'll start with one piece here, and how I think about this is the shoulder pad has an axis here right down through the middle, and that's what I want the bias grain to be on. So I want to have the shoulder pad oriented like that, not like this where the axis is on a length of grain, or like this where it's on a cross grain. I want the axis of the shoulder pad to be on the bias. I'm going to lay the top layer on this side of the shoulder pad and just push my fingers down. And now I'm going to take my other hand up underneath and start to manipulate the fabric. I'm going to try to keep these in alignment. I like to do that. It just helps me know that I have everything on the two bias grains and straight of grains following each other. And I'm going to work my way around. I'm starting at the pointier end of the pad, working my way around to this part of the pad that goes over the shoulder ball. So I'm starting at what would go on the neck, and I'm just using the fingers on the top and the fingers on the bottom to feel the fabric. Now I've come down one side of the pad. It doesn't really matter what orientation your pins are in. And I'll then come down this side. Sometimes I put them in horizontally, sometimes I put them in more vertically. Just let your fingers feel their way through the work. And you can see I'm continually putting my hand down here to make sure that the fabric here is not popping up. And then we're going to turn it over and take a look here. And this is exactly what I want to be getting, is that this top fabric all the way through this area is pretty smooth. I have a little bit of a ripple here, and we're going to bring that down this direction because we're going to have a little pleat here at the back of the pad. If having all of this excess fabric at the corners of your rectangle bothers you, you can cut some of that off. As I say, I like to leave it there because it is a good double check for me visually that my squares aren't skewing. I'm working on the same grain with the top and the bottom rectangle. And so now I can just form this into a little dart, and I often do it 2 or 3 times. It doesn't matter which direction it goes in. Usually the fabric just kind of talks to you. I like the way that went in. This you can just travel until it disappears, either completely, that dimple, or almost disappears. And that looks really nice to me. And this still looks nice to me. I think right in here, I've almost got a bubble right here, and I bet I can work that out because I'm on bias grain right in there. The next step I like to do is cut away some of the excess, and then I'm going to hand baste. So we'll just cut away. It's pretty easy to see where the edge of the pad is with this particular fabric. My next step is to hand baste around this edge, and I want to catch the edge of the pad and both layers. So I'll be hand basting right about in here. And it doesn't really matter where you start and stop. I often do it at the back because that's where I'm going to be doing some hand stitches up that little pleat or dart. It's really more of a dart. And this, again, my fingers are just doing a little bit of work to make sure that I don't have a lump anywhere in the China silk, but the China silk is nice and smooth on both this upper layer that I can see and on the under layer. My fingers are the detectives back there. And this is just a little running stitch. That's all it is. Any kind of thread is fine. I often use the color of thread that I'll be using on the serger, so I don't ever have to take this back out. Now I'm back to where I started, and you can either use the same strand to come up. I often prefer to use a separate strand just in case when I serge some of the stitching gets cut into. I won't compromise my little hand stitch dart, so I'll just put a little knot in there. Now I have a fresh strand of thread, and again I will be sewing with a single strand of thread. I don't use a double, and I am just going to stitch up through this area. It's kind of a slip stitch or a fell stitch, either one or a combination of that, where you want your stitches as invisible as possible. And when I get up here to the top, I've taken my pin out and I can see better how many last little stitches I want. And rather than putting a knot here where it might show, I'm going to take my needle and come back down. And you can come back down the whole way or part way. I often will just slip stitch all the way down or fell stitch all the way down and put my knot at the base. Now I'm ready to take my pins out and just double check. You can see that this fabric is just pushing right up against there. If you need to, you could take another little couple of stitches in there to keep it there, but you can see that it's going to hold its shape really nicely. And up here it looks really nice. And now I'm going to go to the serger. I like to use either a 3-thread or a 4-thread configuration, and I like to have the needle threads in the pad itself, and the serging is finishing on the outside. I try not to cut anything off my pad, but I don't want it out here, the serger stitch out here, so the pad could slip around. So I'm going to be serging right along this edge. I usually start my serging on this, what I think of as this flat or down side. It doesn't really matter, it's just a place that's logical to me, and I serge around and I leave a tail, and then I just take a blunt needle and thread the tail back up through the serging stitch that's sitting right here, so that I don't have to use any fray check. I don't really want to go into how I serge a whole lot, because everybody's serger and how people manipulate their sergers are a little bit different. Sometimes I have my pad up, sometimes I have it down. It just depends on the pad and the serger that you're doing. For some around the curves I have a harder time, other times it's easy. You just have to work with your own serger. Let's take a look at this beautiful shoulder pad. The pad itself is formed nicely, it's covered beautifully, and it's right ready to go into your garment. Please visit my web store to see all of the different shoulder pads I have. And remember, I do have a video on covering a straight shoulder pad. I hope these tips are really helpful to you and that you meet with great success.